3 habits preventing you from getting lean and losing fat. Let's talk about it. And we're talking about this today because oftentimes when people try to lose body fat, some of the things that they start doing are watching what they eat, tracking their calories, maybe doing a little bit more cardio to burn some more calories, and they quickly realize that it's still pretty hard to lose body fat. And the reason being is because our habits, our behaviors, our lifestyle, the things that we do outside of tracking calories and doing cardio influence how easy or difficult it can feel to lose body fat. Okay, so what I'm going to be talking about here are 3 big mistakes, or 3 habits, bad habits, that I see people make often that makes it more difficult for them to lose body fat and get lean and to develop a lean, fit, and muscular body. All right, so first habit preventing you from losing fat and getting lean is not prioritizing strength training during your weight loss phase. Okay, so you're trying to lose body fat. Oftentimes people, the first thing that they do is just start doing more cardio, which makes logical sense, right? I'm gonna do cardio, I'm gonna burn calories, and so they're doing a bunch of cardio, but this is not the way to do it. Okay, this is not the way to do it. First and foremost, it's really important to prioritize muscle specifically during fat loss. And this is something I talk about quite frequently on here, but I wanna share it, information about this from a slightly different perspective besides just building muscle to look jacked. Okay. First off, muscle is incredibly metabolically active. What does that mean? Is that muscle burns calories, all right? And if we want to lose body fat and stay lean and make it feel easy to stay lean, it helps to have more muscle because you can afford to eat more calories. So 1 kilogram of muscle, which is about 2 pounds or 2.2 pounds, increases your resting metabolic rate, or your BMR, by about 21 calories. Now, that doesn't seem like much, right? But when you're just starting your whole health and fitness journey, you can easily put on 10 to 15 pounds of muscle in your first year if you're training correctly and if you're optimizing your nutrition, which can increase your energy expenditure by about 100 calories per day, which is quite significant, right? It's quite significant, especially over time, right? That's an additional 700 calories per week that you can afford to have some more food. And it just makes it easier, again, because you eat more food while staying lean. So it's really, really important to prioritize muscle mass. Now, the issue that happens when you do a ton of cardio and you don't prioritize strength training and you're in a calorie deficit and you're losing weight is that, yes, you lose weight, but you also lose substantial amounts of muscle mass, right? So not only are you not focusing on building muscle to increase your metabolic rate, you're actively losing muscle, which does what? It decreases your metabolic rate, right? So if you're doing a ton of cardio, if you're dieting and cutting your calories and you're losing weight and you're not really prioritizing building muscle through resistance training, you are making it more difficult for yourself to lose additional body fat and to stay lean long term because you're decreasing your muscle mass, which decreases your energy expenditure, all right? Now, I wanna share with you findings from a really, really great study that depicts the importance of resistance training for developing a lean physique that was conducted by Kramer and colleagues back in 1991. Okay, and essentially they were looking at the effects of different exercise modalities compared to just dieting on weight loss, but not just weight loss, because remember, weight loss isn't just body fat, right? But the distribution of fat and muscle loss as a byproduct of that weight loss, right? So what they did was take 35 overweight men and they put them in one of 4 groups. A control group, which did nothing, a diet-only group where they were in a calorie deficit, a diet plus aerobic exercise, so diet plus cardio, and then a diet plus aerobic and resistance training, okay, so cardio and lifting weights. And they did this for 12 weeks. And what did they find? Well, all 3 groups lost the same amount of weight, about 18 pounds. And you might be thinking, well, that's pretty good. Why would I lift weights? Why would I do cardio if I can literally just diet and lose 18 pounds? Here's the kicker. There was a big difference in terms of how much muscle they lost and how much fat they lost, okay? So the diet-only group only lost 69% of fat from the total 18 pounds, okay? Meaning that 31%, which would be roughly, if my math is correct, about 5 pounds or so, was loss of muscle mass. Okay, so yes, they lost 18 pounds, but they lost about 5 pounds of muscle mass. Not good, right? So only 69% of the total weight loss came from fat mass. The group that did aerobic exercise plus dieting did a bit better. They lost 78% of fat mass, right? But the group that did diet plus aerobic training plus resistance training lost almost exclusively just fat. Okay, they had 97% of weight loss coming just from fat mass, meaning that they only lost 3% of lean mass or muscle mass, right? Which just indicates that although all of these individuals lost the same amount of weight, they definitely did not have the same improvements in body composition, right? Again, we're not trying to just lose weight for the sake of losing weight. We're trying to lose fat and get leaner. And if you're losing a ton of fat and losing a ton of muscle, guess what? You're not really getting leaner. You're just becoming a smaller version of yourself, but you still have very similar body composition because you're losing a ton of muscle mass. And again, body composition is the relationship or the distribution between fat mass and muscle mass as it relates to total body weight, not just total weight, right? So it is incredibly important for you to prioritize resistance training if you're not already doing so. So what is it that you need to do? I would recommend strength training at least 3 times per week, no less. Okay, at least 3 times per week. More is better. Make it your primary modality of exercise. The purpose of exercise is not to lose weight. It is simply to improve your health and improve your body composition. There's no better way of doing that than by prioritizing strength training. And you want to focus on training with good technique, and you want to make sure you're getting stronger week to week, if not month to month, but really making sure that you're tracking your progress in the gym, tracking your performance, and slowly adding a rep here or there to different exercises, or adding 5 pounds here and there to different exercises. And this episode's not on like an in-depth analysis of how to train for muscle growth, but if you're interested in learning more about that, make sure to check out my Fundamentals of Hypertrophy Training episode. I've done a couple of episodes here on the podcast that dive deep into the specific details or specific variables that are important for muscle growth. Okay? Make sure to check those out. And the last thing I will say here is that don't rely on lifting weights as your only modality of movement. Make sure you get out and move around and walk and do a little bit of cardio as well, right? Because if you're completely sedentary and you sit all day and you just go to the gym 3 times per week, that's not going to be very helpful either for fat loss, because your energy expenditure is going to be pretty low, right? So prioritize resistance training. Make sure you're getting stronger to improve muscle mass, which will help with fat loss because it's going to increase your energy expenditure, increase your metabolic rate, but also make sure that you're staying active outside of the gym. Okay, habit number 2, preventing you from losing fat and getting lean, is late night snacking. This one's kind of a no-brainer. But I do want to discuss some specific impacts of late night snacking on body composition that you may not have thought about before. Okay, so first and foremost, what's wrong with late night snacking? We know that calories matter more than anything. When you eat throughout the day doesn't matter all that much, which is true. But here are a couple of things to keep in mind. First and foremost, the types of foods that we tend to consume later at night are not the healthiest, right? Don't lie to yourself. When's the last time you had like some grilled chicken and a salad right before bed? Probably not that frequently, right? We tend to snack on foods that are more calorically dense, that are higher in sugar, more processed foods typically, which can contribute to weight gain, right? So that's the first thing to keep in mind, is that we typically don't make the best food choices when we're eating late at night. And it's because most times we snack before bed. It's not because we're hungry. It's because we're bored. And we just walk by our kitchen, we walk by the pantry, we grab something to eat, and it doesn't have any sort of positive impact on our goals or making progress towards our goals, I should say, right? The second negative of eating before bed is that if you're eating a lot before bed, it can have a negative impact on sleep. And sleep is incredibly important for improvements in body composition, which we'll talk about a little bit more in habit number 3. Spoiler alert, habit number 3 is about sleep. But it has a negative impact on sleep, because when you consume food, your body needs to metabolize that food, right? And metabolism is a metabolically active process, which means that you're actually burning calories while you're metabolizing food. But this is important because it increases your core body temperature. Okay, so your body temperature actually slightly increases after eating when you're metabolizing food. And the more food you eat, the more pronounced this effect is. Why does this matter? Because in order to be able to fall asleep, our bodies actually need to reduce or lower their core body temperature, right? And if you're eating before bed, you're inhibiting your body's ability to reduce its core body temperature. So it makes it harder to fall asleep. Maybe anecdotally you've noticed this, that if you have a really big meal, let's say you go out to dinner, you have a really big meal at a restaurant, you come home, it's hard to fall asleep, right? Part of that is because you're metabolizing that food. So what to do to reduce late night snacking? Because I feel like this is something that probably a lot of people do, and they're like, man, I shouldn't be snacking at night, but it's really hard not to. Let me share with you a couple of tips here that are going to help. Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt this episode, but I just wanted to let you know that I recently partnered with Hungry Root, which is a fantastic meal delivery service. Honestly, I rarely ever partner with companies because I only like to support companies and products that I truly believe in. And unfortunately, in the fitness space, there's a ton of shitty products. But every once in a while, I have the opportunity to partner with amazing companies like Hungry Root. When you go to their website, all you have to do is fill out a quick questionnaire about your dietary preferences to make sure that the food they send you is actually stuff that you like. I always select for the meals to take minimal prep time because I don't want to spend a ton of time cooking. They literally take under 5 minutes. And I choose the high protein option for the gains, of course. What's cool is that they also send you specific recipes to make with the ingredients that they send you to make sure that nothing goes to waste. I really appreciate that because I can't tell you how much stuff we throw out in our house. If you're looking for a convenient, healthy, delicious, and affordable food delivery service, make sure to check out Hungry Root. You will not be disappointed. The link to their site will be down in the description of this episode. And they've been kind enough to support my podcast and give you, the listener, 40% off of your first order by using the code JoeyMunoz40, which will just be automatically put into your cart when you use the specific link that's in the description of this episode. All right, let's go ahead and get back into the podcast. The first tip I'm going to give you is to shift more of your food to the beginning of the day. Have a bigger breakfast, have a bigger lunch. That might sound counterintuitive, right? And it's funny because oftentimes when people are trying to lose body fat, they do the exact opposite. They're like, I'm going to skip breakfast because I snack at night. So if I snack at night, I shouldn't eat in the morning because then I can eat more food at night. But this is completely counterintuitive. There's actually really great research showing that individuals who eat more food earlier in the day, again, have a big breakfast, have a big lunch, compared to skipping breakfast and having a big dinner, individuals who do that have greater energy expenditure, so they burn more calories throughout the day, which makes sense because if you start off the day with a well-balanced breakfast, you probably have a little bit more energy, you probably move around a little bit more, you probably fidget a little bit more, which contributes to increased energy expenditure. And people who eat more food earlier in the day also have better hunger regulation. There's really good evidence of this as well. When we talk about hunger, physiologically, we measure things like ghrelin, we measure things like leptin, GLP-1. These are different hormones that are associated with hunger regulation. And we see that individuals who eat more of their food earlier in the day have better regulation of hunger-related hormones, and they also report, so self-reported data, report feeling more satiated, less hungry throughout the day. So tip number one is to shift more food earlier in the day. And I've seen this be beneficial for so many clients. I've had clients where some of the first habits that I recommend them start working on is consuming more breakfast because they've been skipping breakfast for a while because they snack at night, right? And they're like, I skip breakfast because I can't control my food intake at night. And so I just cut out how much I eat in the morning because that's easy to do. I just have coffee and then I don't eat till noon or 1. And one of the first things I tell them is you're gonna eat a big breakfast within an hour of waking up. Typically they're hesitant to do so, but I can't tell you, it's been countless times now where they start doing it, they trust the process, and they're like, wow, I feel so much more satiated. I'm not hungry throughout the day. It's easier to regulate my food intake at night. So that's the first thing I would recommend. The second thing, which is a little bit counter to what I just mentioned, but it's not, I'll explain, is to have a large dinner. Have a nice big meal, right? What I tend to, the phrase that I like to recommend is, or the phrase that I like to say, I should say, is have meals at meals. Simply meaning, stop grazing so much throughout the day, and when you're hungry, have a big meal. So have a big dinner that is satiating, right? Typically for me, I will have dinner around 6:30 p.m. or so, and I don't eat for the rest of the night. I go to sleep around 9:30 or 10. And sometimes I have a small snack before bed, like a little cup of Greek yogurt or something like that, but I definitely don't snack on a ton of food. So have a big dinner, right? Have a big portion of protein, maybe 6 to 10 ounces of a main protein source, depending on how big of a person you are and how much protein you're trying to consume. But have a big portion of protein with your meal and have at least 2 servings of veggies, right? So for dinner, frequently, I'll have something like some rice or some potatoes, maybe some ground beef or a piece of chicken breast, and about a handful and a half of some sauteed broccoli or some Brussels sprouts or something like that, right? So you get a ton of volume. It's a lot of food. It's very satiating, but it's not extremely calorically dense. And this helps because if you have a big meal for dinner, you're going to feel full for the next 3 or 4 hours, right? You're not going to feel like snacking as much. And so what happens is that you can just go to bed, right? You go to bed. That's essentially what you do. And the issue is that oftentimes people try to really have small meals when they're dieting. So I'm going to have really small meals. Why? Because I'm trying to reduce my calories. And what happens is that they end up feeling really hungry and they snack a ton between their meals and they snack a ton before bed. And so they make up all those calories with the snacks that they're having. The easiest way to have bigger meals is just to add more vegetables to your meals, right? A bigger meal doesn't necessarily mean a more calorically dense meal. It just means that you're having more food. So try to have more food at dinner so you feel satiated. And then a very simple tip that I would recommend, this is kind of like a hack, but not really, just a trick that I would recommend doing, is to set a cutoff time, right? I'm really big on having an eating schedule. So I tend to eat breakfast, I've shared this so many times, but around 7 or 7:30 in the morning. I have lunch around 1 p.m. I have a snack between lunch and dinner, and my snack is usually a protein shake and some fruit. And I have dinner, like I mentioned, around 6:30 or so. And I stop eating after dinner. That's it, it's done. Like I mentioned, sometimes I have a small snack, but that's when I'm done eating. And I try to stick to that schedule to the best of my ability. And one thing that helps is that after you finish having dinner, go and brush your teeth. Go and brush your teeth. And then you probably won't want to eat stuff because you don't want to brush your teeth again. And if you don't brush your teeth before bed, that's disgusting. Start brushing your teeth before bed, please. For the love of God, brush your teeth before bed. But all jokes aside, that's kind of just like a nice little mental hack, right? If you have a schedule, it's like, hey, I have dinner at 6:30. I'm done eating at 6:30. I'm going to have a big meal for dinner so I feel full all the way until it's bedtime. And after dinner, I'm going to brush my teeth. And if you do have some cravings for something sweet, I recommend having 0-calorie sweetened beverages, right? Something like a Coke Zero, for example, or whatever sort of drink that you like that's 0 calories, that's nice and sweet. Because sometimes I want something sweet before bed as well, right? I'll have something like a Diet Gatorade or something like that. It helps me fill my cup. I know that sounds very boring, but I promise you it's not boring to me and I really enjoy it. Something like a Diet Ginger Ale, sometimes we have too because my wife really likes Diet Ginger Ale. All right. Habit number 3, preventing you from losing fat and getting lean is not prioritizing sleep. So I hinted at the importance of sleep in habit number 2, but let's talk about this specifically, okay? Why is sleep so important? Well, first and foremost, poor sleep or sleep restriction, I'll call it, has been shown to negatively impact energy expenditure and energy intake. So the same way that I was talking about breakfast, saying that eating more food earlier in the day increases energy expenditure, right? And it helps reduce energy intake as well by regulating hunger and satiety. Poor sleep has the exact opposite effect. So if you're not sleeping adequately, you have reduced energy expenditure, pretty self-explanatory. You're probably tired, you move less, you burn less calories, and you also have an increased in hunger and satiety. But I should say an increase in hunger, a decrease in satiety. Satiety is just the opposite of hunger. And this is through the regulation of those hormones that we were talking about, ghrelin, leptin, etc. So it's incredibly important that you sleep adequately. And I'll give you some specific tips on how to do so in just a second. But in addition to this, and by the way, this increase in hunger is shown in studies even when participants are consuming the same number of calories, which is really interesting, right? So if you and I are the same person and you sleep less than I do, and we both eat 2,000 calories and they are the exact same foods, you will feel hungrier than I do, simply because you're getting poor sleep. This is well documented in the research literature. So it's really important that you prioritize sleep in order to regulate your hunger, right? And in order to have higher energy expenditure as well. 2 things which are obviously really important for losing body fat. Now, a third point that is really interesting is that poor sleep is associated with an increased craving for calorie-dense foods. And this is self-reported data, but when individuals are sleep restricted, when they sleep less, they tend to crave more calorie-dense foods, right? Highly processed foods, chips, cakes, ice cream, all the tasty stuff. It's easier to control our cravings when we're getting adequate sleep. And the final point that I'll make here is that similar to how in habit 1 I was saying that resistance training helps you preserve and increase muscle mass during fat loss, and I shared that study that individuals who did not resistance train lost only, of the total weight that they lost, only 63% of it was fat. And out of the individuals that lifted weights, 97% of the weight that they lost came from fat. Well, sleep restriction has the exact opposite effect as well. So when you lose weight, if you are sleep restricted, you will lose more muscle mass and less fat mass, which again is not good, right? So it can, if like you're doing all the dieting stuff, right? You're lifting your weights, and you're not sleeping well, which so many people do because they eat late at night. They go out on the weekends till 2 or 3 in the morning, and they have a couple of drinks, and they're getting drunk maybe once or twice a week, and they're getting poor sleep chronically. That has a direct negative impact on body composition, period. Okay, so it's really important that you're prioritizing proper sleep for optimizing body composition, even if you're losing the same amount of weight. Even if you're feeling hungrier when you're sleep deprived and you're like, I'm disciplined, I can be hungry, it's all good, I don't care. You're still going to lose more muscle mass and less fat mass, even if you eat the same caloric intake and lose the same amount of weight. So it's important to prioritize sleep. Now, how do we do this? First and foremost, I think it's really important to have a sleep hygiene routine. And a sleep hygiene routine simply means that you do a similar routine from day to day before bed, right? I think it's really helpful to do a relaxing activity before bed, right? So my sleep hygiene routine is I watch something that's pretty just like chill on TV, right? Nothing that's gonna make my heart race or anything like that. I might just watch like something like comedic or something like that. And I watch TV outside of my bedroom. I don't watch TV in my bed, right? And then when 9:30 hits, I typically go into my bedroom, I should say. I'll brush my teeth and I crawl into bed and I go to sleep. That's my sleep hygiene routine. It works for me, right? Find what works for you. Try to do a relaxing activity before bed. Maybe that's reading a book. Maybe that's taking a hot bath or a warm shower. Maybe that's doing a little bit of yoga. I would recommend watching TV outside of your bedroom. If you watch TV in bed and you have a hard time falling asleep, don't do that. Have a routine that's fairly consistent from day to day. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2, that kind of goes hand in hand with the sleep hygiene routine, is to limit adrenaline releasing activities before bed. Okay, so first and foremost, action movies, horror movies, anything that you're watching on TV that is exhilarating is going to increase your heart rate, it's going to increase adrenaline, it's going to make it harder to fall asleep. Things like video games, right? If you play some video games before bed, it might be harder to fall asleep. If you're watching sports, especially if you're watching a sport for a team that you really care about. I know for me, if I watch basketball, because I love basketball, if I watch the Miami Heat play, and it's a 9 p.m. game, I'm not going to be able to sleep, right? Even if it's like a 7 p.m. game, they usually go on for 2.5 hours. I'm jumping, I'm screaming, my heart rate's through the roof. It's going to be hard for me to go to sleep. So limit these adrenaline releasing activities, okay? 3 is temperature, right? Make sure you have a cool room. Ideally set your temperature below 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you can afford a mattress pad that is a cooling mattress pad, that would be super helpful as well. As I was mentioning earlier, our core body temperature needs to reduce to be able to fall asleep. And we can artificially manipulate that and facilitate that process by reducing the temperature in the room or in the house, right? Control your AC. We can do that with different technologies that we have nowadays. There are mattress pads that you can put on your bed and you can control the specific temperature of it, but make sure it's nice and cool in your room so your body can fall asleep. And 3 is to limit light exposure, right? TVs, phones, anything, like light can negatively impact your ability to fall asleep as well. So the reason why I don't watch TV in my bedroom is because of that, right? So I like my room to be completely pitch black, nice and cold. I don't watch anything that elevates my heart rate before bed. I mean, sometimes I do. Like, again, if there's a basketball game late at night and it's maybe once a week or once every other week that I do that, I mean, I really enjoy it. But in general, you don't want to be doing this all the time. and have a pretty consistent sleep hygiene routine. That's how you can optimize your sleep in order to optimize losing fat and having a lean, healthy, and fit body. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up this episode. Hopefully these tips were helpful and you have some insights on things to modify and improve to be able to lose fat, get lean, get in shape, look jacked, look amazing, and make it feel easier. If you enjoyed this episode, and if you're a regular listener or watcher or viewer, I should say, of the show, all I ask is that you take a second to review the show and leave a rating on whatever app you're listening to. And if you're watching on YouTube, give it a thumbs up, give it a like for the algorithm. It helps me a ton. And leave me a comment as well and let me know which of these habits are you messing up on and how are you going to improve it. Awesome, guys. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I'll catch you again in next week's episode. Peace.